Hi, I'm Tim, and welcome to the Chesler Sound Podcast. I have over a decade of experience working within audio, from music productions to podcasts to audio for film and video to even live events and anything in between. Yet, there's still so much more I still need to learn from so many unique, interesting people behind those scenes. And I would like to share those people and their insights and their stories with you. So come with me and let's take a listen on what they have to say. Welcome to a new episode of the Chesler Sound Podcast. I'm here with Adam Frick-Verdine, and today we're going to be going over sound design and just overall audio for video production. He's worked on a plethora of different projects, including VeggieTales series. I think it's easier just to list the ones you probably haven't worked on at this point. You've also worked on another show, Wing Feather Saga, as well as other movies like Bad Grandmas. And I can't just go through the whole, that would take the whole episode at this point.
It's a long list of things nobody's ever heard of. That's right, yeah.
Oh, I wouldn't say no one's ever heard of. I've definitely heard of a handful of those. Oh, granted, I was in your class as well. He was a former
And you worked
professor.
on a few too, yep.
Yep. Oh yeah, I did work on one of those. Those were very fun projects, in my opinion. Probably some of the highlights of my tenure at Webster. Welcome to the podcast episode, and
thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Thank you for coming on board, especially with how busy your schedule is. Yeah, I heard you got a farm and got a whole
little one. Yep.
You're teaching out there too. So, Adam, what got you started with audio and specifically sound design? What were the opportunities that came your way, and how'd you learn all the tips and tricks that got you to where you are?
Yeah, big question, long answer there probably. I actually started recording on a 4-track cassette machine when I was in high school. I had a piano teacher way back who taught me a lot of theory and chord structure and stuff, and then a guitar teacher who was really into the recording side of things too. So I had a little 4-track machine, and I thought I was the Beatles because I was recording 3 tracks and putting them on one, and then I had bouncing tracks around and doing the whole thing. So I've been doing some recording, music or whatever other thing for a very long time. I went to school at DePaul University in Chicago and studied sound recording there. I played French horn the whole 4 years too, but got my degree in sound recording. So that was a lot of music recording, some sound design, just kind of a couple little sound design projects. But I didn't really know what I wanted to do with it. I didn't know if I was going to record, orchestras or bands, or how I was going to, make something out of it. Ultimately, I had an internship with a place in Wisconsin for the summer after my junior year, I think. So I was up in Madison, Wisconsin, and I knew the organization. It was like a Christian fellowship sort of group. And so they did all kinds of different productions and conferences and that sort of thing. So I didn't know what I was going to be up to. But one of the projects that summer was they shot a little short film that they were using for some event. And doing that process and seeing the sort of post-production for this little short film just got me interested in it and hooked on it. So, from there, I realized that was more interesting to me. It suits my personality better. I'm pretty terrible, on my feet. I've done plenty of music recording over the years, and I've done some live sound, but I get way too anxious and nervous about it, and I skip important things, and I forget to turn on the phantom power, and it's a big mess. So I'm much better here, where I can just sit down and focus and get something done.
All in one screen. You don't have to be like, well, what's that over?
Yeah, it's all in one place, and you mess something up and you can go back to it, and sort of, I'm not a perfectionist, but just that ability to sort of deal with it on my own terms just suits my personality, which I learned early on.
About to say, I have a quick question on that with the perfectionist kind of realm. At what point do you go, this is good enough? Or do you just go, I hit the deadline, just send it?
That's the old saying, right? You're never done with something, you just run out of time. And I try not to think that way too much, because I'll work late nights or long days or whatever. I need to get something done. I hate to use the term good enough, but I definitely am. A lot of audio people I find can be very gearheads and really specific, and they got to use this specific thing. And I don't have that constitution. For me, it's not good enough, but if it works and if it's good, it's good. I don't need to second guess things, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
So especially when it comes to sound design, the quality of a footstep or the sound of a creature, the distance of a door opening or something, when it's wrong, it's wrong. And if it's good enough, it's not good. But when it works, I'm that works, it's done, let's move on. If it works, I don't need to say, well, could it be this or that or the other? I think that's kind of what I like with picture too. Like you see the door, it's this thick, it goes this fast, it closes and the handle jiggles. You make what's there and you make it work and you make it believable. So yeah, it suits me for sure. InterVarsity it's called, and they had like a bunch of every couple of years they had this big conference. So I thought it would be kind of like not live sound, but sort of production stuff. But yeah, they had a small production facility and a small edit, like picture edit and a small audio studio. So I work with the guy, Jonathan, I forget his last name. Anyways, great guy. So I had that, and then sort of friend of a friend of a friend worked at Big Idea Productions. This was in Chicago, which are the people who made VeggieTales. It's kind of a funny story. My then fiance, now wife, we were literally babysitting for their kids. They said, "Hey, play this video for them if they get bored." And it was VHS. This was back in the day. And the card falls out and it says the address was Chicago, Illinois. I'm like, oh, I didn't even know they made these here. So the friend of a friend of a friend at least got me a connection. And the composer there, Kurt Heinecke, who's started me off and we're still friends and work together now, he needed an intern for a summer, mostly doing music recording and working with the dialogue and stuff. So I managed to get that internship that summer before my senior year, and then had an internship that whole senior year. And then they brought me on full time when I graduated. So yeah, it's a sort of funny series of connections that got me started with that kind of work.
All right. Yeah, yeah. I always hear it's like that one connection of a connection that gets you in, you know? It's all about that networking and audio.
Yeah. Well, it is. And you know, what's funny, Kurt has told me this many years later, but I had an interview. It went great. I thought I left and I had this feeling like, man, I really want this. This would be a good fit for me. It would be a good fit for my life and what I want to do and whatever. And so I literally picked up the phone, I think when I got back home, and just called and ended up leaving a voicemail and just said, "Hey, Kurt, thanks for the interview. I really hope I can do this. This would be great." And he told me years later that like it was that follow-up phone call that ultimately got me the internship, because he had, interviewed plenty of people. So, just goes to speak for like working for what you want and, speaking up for yourself sort of.
Mhm.
And like you said, when an opportunity comes along, you just got to take it. You got to grab it.
Yeah, yeah. I can't think of like a whole lot of opportunities I turned down, you know?
Right.
If I
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, especially with sound design and something that you can be so creative with. I feel like you really do have like a whole canvas. And, some folks might be like, I want to train on this canvas, but you're like, all right, but like the wheels is actually going to be a squeaky spoon
Right.
scraping,
Right.
like kind of thing.
Right. Yeah.
So when you started off, you were learning, all these different tricks and all these different things. But for me, the best way I learned is usually in kind of, oh man, like I'm going to mess up, or I messed this up and I got to fix it, or this is looking really bad and I have to fix it. Like some sort of scenario that really puts me in a bind where it does rely on my skill set in order to fix it. Do you find yourself, have you had those moments? And if you do you mind sharing a couple
Yeah.
examples?
For sure. We were talking about my early days at school in Chicago. This was the late 90s. It was long enough ago that we were cutting tape. I don't know. Did they make you cut tape at Webster when you were there?
So I specifically took an analog class, but
Okay,
yeah,
nice. Good, good,
I
good. Okay,
and maybe multi-track might have, but yeah, no,
gotcha.
we did have just a few.
Yeah. Yeah, we didn't have a lot. I mean, we recorded to tape some, but we had an edit project where you had to pick whatever song, lay it down to tape, and then cut a couple different versions, cut a 60, a 30, a 15, just an edit project, but literally razor blades and tape and the whole thing. And I remember from that project, it was a Paul Simon tune, Homeless with Ladysmith Black Mambazo, this huge like reverb tail and everything. It's beautiful. And this is tape. So I literally cut off the reverb tail. Like as literally as you can be, I cut the tail trying to make this edit. And of course, my professor was like, Tom was like, "Hey, you cut the reverb tail. I lost whatever points, not a big deal." But I remember, and now anytime I'm cutting music for anything, obviously digitally, I'm not cutting a lot of tape, but like that little lesson has stuck with me. You know what I mean? Just watching those little tiny details. Again, this was class. This was not high stakes by any stretch, but definitely a lesson I've carried along with me, as small as it
Yeah,
was. Yeah.
no, I feel that for sure. I can't tell you how many times, especially while learning at Webster, where they had us do a project of, oh, we need to get this sound. It's like, well, we're supposed to record everything, so can't just sample that in. And we're like, all right, well, we need glass breaking. Someone just comes over with like duffel bag of just empty bottles and just like,
Nice.
hey guys. I'm
Right.
like, all right.
We're doing this.
Yeah. I always love the improvisation of trying to figure out what sound to use in a given situation. What are
Yeah.
some like tips and tricks you might have had that got you got you an edge over your competition? What's the real defining feature that you think you bring that defines you from your peers?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I mean, in terms of Foley stuff, like you were talking about, finding that perfect sound, it comes down to a sort of the very first time I recorded Foley, I actually was working on a film, an independent film in Chicago, and the studio I was working at, they had a guy that they used for their Foley, and he was actually an actor, like on stage. He was trained as a theatrical actor and he did stage fighting in the whole 9 yards. And they used him because he knew how to use his body, right? There was a certain degree of like literally acting to it. And I think that's something I often try to remember. I mean, so much of Foley is literally finding the right random thing to make the sound, but remembering that you are sort of acting, even though it may just be feet or cloth or little hands or something. I find myself, in these strange positions because I'm mimicking what I'm seeing on screen, even if it's just a hand or a touch or grab, like following that emotion of the character, the little hiccups in there, whatever, I think really makes a big difference into how it translates and ultimately contributes to the piece. You know what I mean?
I absolutely agree with that because I have so many folks going like, "Oh, that's gonna sound great in post and stuff like that." I'm like, most of my experiences with music production of
Okay, yeah.
working with like someone with working with talent, and I've had instances where someone's, it's an angry hip hop part, and they're like trying to go for angry rap, and they go in like lay back and chill.
Right,
I'm like,
right,
I can't fix that. I can't fix
right,
that
right.
performance. At the end of the day, you're capturing a performance, and if you don't
Yeah.
have that emotion behind it, you can tweak it, but you can't remake emotion.
And that's so true
Yeah.
with I get deal with that with ADR all the time. Even I forget what film it was, but it was like a big Hollywood feature my wife and I were watching last weekend, and I could instantly pick out the ADR in this one scene. I mean, these are like A-list actors, but you could just tell something was off in their performance or the recording or maybe a little bit of both. Um, just getting yourself into that. I mean, I'm not an actor, but getting an actor getting themselves into that space with ADR is so tricky and so important to nail that thing just so. Yeah. And it's funny you talking about angry performances. The other thing I find people often I think Foley needs to be really kind of small. If it's a small thing, you have to do it small. And the other thing that I tell my students and that I do all the time is to really overperform things. And again, with music and mixing, especially like if you're mastering something, okay, maybe you're going to do a half a dB or a quarter, you're going to do these little tiny things, but like just go for it. This is digital. You can always undo things, you can always redo things. I'm always going with a mix. I'm going big and then you can pull it back. And when I'm performing stuff, I'm old enough that I'm like blowing out my knees walking footsteps because I'm walking hard. You know what I mean? I'm
Yeah.
out here putting, moving air, trying to actually get some sound through the microphone and recorded. You can always dial it back, but it's even if it's a little sound, you've got to get it big because once it's up on the screen, it needs to be big to sit in that mix, right?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And even with footsteps and stuff, there's a performance that goes behind that too.
Oh
Like,
yeah.
like every little shuffle, or if I remember correctly, you informed me you have actually a pair of heels in order to perform for folks wearing heels, right? Like
Oh
that's
yeah, for sure. Oh
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, like
I've
you
got a
gotta
couple pair of high heels and I've got some shoes that don't look like high heels but sound like them. And
oh yeah,
um,
that's even more important. Like comfort's
yeah,
a key.
yeah. The high heels that I have are very uncomfortable. So yeah, I actually don't. I do use them, but not as not when I don't have to. Well, like right now, I have the series, The Wingfeather Saga. One of the main characters has a peg leg. He's an old, crusty sailor guy, and so he's got a peg leg. And so again, I have a like a 2x4 that I use, and I have it on my right side because he's got his peg leg on the right side, and I keep that my right foot off to the side. I'm not walking with it because so I have to sort of limp the same way he does. So those little things of getting the I mean, obviously the surface has to be right and the timing has to be right, the impacts, those transients, but it's all little things in between that I think really do make a difference in making it stick to the screen and feel believable.
I kind of actually want to dive into, you had all these connections and you have been put on all these projects. Does having your Hug Monster Sound studio, does that help with bringing the work in, or is that more of like a resume builder for you?
It's a little bit of both. I mean, I had most of my money I've made so far in my career has been from those first early connections. People, through Big Idea and met people who introduced me to people and the whole thing. And it's about being a good people person too, and to keep those connections. But yeah, Hug Monster. I mean, I just was like Adam Sound was my brilliant, business name for the long time.
That
Yeah, yeah.
idea. Just
Um, right, Chesler Sound.
yeah,
Right. So
yeah.
like, I
Who
just
does
keeping it
that?
simple. Yeah. Uh, and at some point, I thought this was when I was in St. Louis, and I had the same clients and people coming back, and I appreciate that. But I was trying to get into some new work, right, and trying to get in front of some new people. So yeah, the Hug Monster Sound brand has been sort of about not those bigger projects, but getting smaller, lots of smaller things that add up. So yeah, it's become to some extent it's just the LLC that the work flows through. But yeah,
The
there was definitely
catch-all.
some attention. Yeah, some attention put into the brand there just to get a little visibility, sort of.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. Yeah. I'm always trying to catch whatever comes my way, the Chelsea Sound, I think it's just a brand just to for me it's a two-factor thing, I can display all my works on that
Right.
all the artists through there, and then I can also have it as a catch-all, like people can contact me through that page for any works and interests as well.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. No, and I could go into the weeds of like website domains and stuff, but I'm not going to because this is about audio. Whether you're a local music fan or a creator looking for a professional sound, I want to show you what we have to offer here at Chesler Sound. First, check out our latest releases. We're constantly updating our library, and you can stream new music from our featured artists right from the site. We make it easy to support independent artists with flexible options that put the control in your hands. Visit the shop for exclusive gear and unique items to help you represent the Chesler Sound community. If you're a creator, my private studio offers high-quality professional audio support for your next music, film, or podcast project. Interested? Visit us at cheslersound.com to listen, shop, or start your next project. It's
Right,
not
right.
about websites.
I build my
But
own, and they're terrible websites. I coded HTML way back in the day for like projects and nonprofits and friends in college and early years, but I do not code HTML anymore. It's way too complicated for me.
yeah, no, especially with CSS and everything in
Yeah, yeah.
between.
Oh my
I was
gosh.
like,
Yeah.
oh yeah,
Yeah.
no, I was too much now.
Yeah.
I just want to stick with programming audio stuff.
There you go. Exactly. Right.
Yeah, yeah. But speaking of making things a little bit easier for you, AI is always there, advertising, make your website easier and whatnot. Do you see those tools entering into the sound design realm? Because I've seen it coming across in music production. You have all these different, oh, we can find all the sounds you need, we'll edit it down, we can do the vocal, like make a whole unique voice. Do you see that going into your world or doing like a full generative takeover? Or is it more like the accent tools and stuff? Like for instance, visually I've seen like lip syncs, like they'll edit the lip syncs to match the
Right.
language it was
Right. Right. Right.
translated to. That one
I buy
I'll
that.
take that. I'll take
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm sort of a like AI Luddite to some extent in some ways, but I realized the other day I was telling somebody, being a curmudgeon, how much I hate AI, and realized that some of the noise reduction tools that I use, like the Isotope and the Waves version, they've been advertising their AI, whatever, for many years, and I use some of those. A lot of the stuff, my bread and butter is animation, and so we don't luckily have to deal with that too much. But I had a series, it was like an improv sketch comedy, sort of somewhere in between stand-up-ish. Anyways, and that was a bunch of lavs and booms, and that was a hot mess of sound that we had to end up doing a lot of that sort of restoration work. So some of that ends up being AI, and I'll be honest, like there's times where I will run it through the automatic whatever AI thing, and then I'll double back and do my own version by hand and figure out which is better. A lot of times theirs ends up better, I'll be honest, but I like having the control. A lot of times you dump something like that in and it just comes back out.
Correct. Yeah.
And it's better. Well, usually it is, but I don't like the ability to say, well, it's better, except I don't like this thing about it. So when you sort of crack the hood open and do it yourself, you can you can pick it apart and make revisions the way you need to. But I definitely have used it for that. I did this weird little short film recently. It was AI imagery. The director that I've worked with before, and he's also, as he said, not a huge fan of AI, but just kind of wanted to do an experiment, just wanted to learn how to do it. Each clip that he had generated came with its own dialogue, voices that it generated, and came with its own sound effects. And the funny thing is, because at the time, I think he made it like a year ago, the AI was only generating 8 seconds at a time. So from clip to clip, the sounds for certain things were different. So like
No consistency, yeah.
There's no consistency. And again, I'm sure this is, the stuff's changing so fast. I'm sure that's less true now, or, you have ways to get around that. But we scrapped all the AI voices. He re-recorded voices with real people. And yeah, I mean, I've heard the same bands everybody else has on Spotify, the like top charting bands that are all AI or whatever. But yeah, luckily I'm sort of insulated in my little world and I can kind of stay away from it, which has been nice so far. The tool that I use to search my sound effects, the like database, the new version, they have if you can't find a sound, just, use our AI generator to create a sound, which I have not dove into much yet, but perhaps someday it'll be just the thing you need. I don't know. I have more fun going out. It's like, I need a crashing metal sound. I'm going to go crash some metal. Like, that's why I do this. It's more fun than just hitting a button.
It for me, the generative stuff it takes away from the fun of
right.
it. The thing that people are passionate about. But I will admit the tedious stuff that they fix is fantastic in my world. I would absolutely say, like, for me, I haven't been using the isotope as much with my main job, like day job and everything. I do a few podcasts for them. And since we go through Zoom and it's through people's laptops, it's not great, for most of like the starting. But we use Adobe Podcasts, like they just through the Adobe suite. And that stuff is blowing my mind too. It gives you like, when you do the full purchase of it, it gives you 2 sliders of like one for, to remove the background noise. And it does another one to add the presence of a close mic in an isolated room.
Right.
Which that's the part that I'm like, okay, that's where the AI I think really is coming in. But
yeah.
Yeah, it does wonders. I had like this huge, like, sounded like a guy was just in like basically a bathroom doing his conversation from just how much of an echo chamber it was. And through that process, it sounded like he was just right in the studio. And I was like, I can't even.
Yeah. Yeah. Again, the isotope has it's synthesis essentially, right? It's like, I forget what they call it, but spectral repair or whatever. And it literally shows you, here's what came through on the Zoom call, and it creates, all the stuff on either side. So yeah, I mean, that's certainly not something I can do by hand.
Yeah, because I feel like at that point it is going through checking the phonetics, and like it has a library of its own of different
right.
like resonance essentially, and then just adds that into flavor.
Yeah.
And we could probably do it, but not that fast.
Yeah. It would take me a very long time.
At least a year of just constantly working on it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. For one terrible podcast episode, right?
Yeah. What are you trying to say? No, I'm joking. So with AI generative everything, it takes the fun out of, some of the fun stuff. What was one of the funnest sound effects you recorded and used for a project?
The one that I think of recently is so the Wing Feather Saga, which is a series I'm working on now, has a lot of interesting creatures. It's a fantasy series, and so the director and the guy who wrote the books, their directive has always sort of been all these creatures and all these environments should be about 80%. Oh yeah, and about 20%. What? So all these creatures sound familiar, right? Oh yeah, it's a bird. Oh, it's a cow, whatever. Ages ago, probably a couple years ago, with giving one of my kids a bath at nighttime, and it was Easter time. We had little plastic Easter eggs, so they would put the Easter egg under the water, and it would make whatever little sound a plastic Easter egg made. And I remember thinking, damn, that's a really interesting sound. I don't know what I'll ever do with that, but so it came to the Wing Feather Saga. I think it was the very first episode of the first season. There's these little birds called a fazzle dove, and they're cute little fat birds, and they needed to have some song. And then the gimmick is that they're gassy, and so they sort of percolate, and then they have these huge farts, which is the gimmick. So I'm like, aha, this is going to be the Easter egg. So sure enough, I recorded the Easter egg underwater,
I
bubbling
kind
up,
of
making a
want to
little
do knee
sound.
slap for that one, actually. It's an Easter egg, not only as a sound, but literally, it's an Easter egg you're
It's an Easter
using.
egg. There you go. That's right. Here's the Easter egg about the Easter egg. Yeah.
Sorry, I had to knee slap that one. That's
That's all
too
right. Go
good
for
not
it.
to pass.
Go
But
for it.
okay, yeah, yeah.
So yeah, put the got this like bubbling sound and ended up putting it on in a sampler on a keyboard so I could play it, listen to a bunch of bird songs, because you don't think of bird songs as having melodies per se, but they do. So came up with a little like melodic figure that this thing could have and played the bubbling Easter egg sound on the keyboard to come up with this melody, and then used a series of those bubbles and of course some other stuff and some songbirds and some recordings of one of my chickens who's on the other side of this wall in the studio, and came up with this really interesting, again, it sounds like a bird until suddenly it doesn't. So that's one of the funnest ones lately that there was a lot of fun to just sort of put together over a long process.
Actually, like going on the topic here, what was one of the trickiest sounds you went out to capture?
I years ago for a film in St. Louis, a really great indie film. I'm like, oh, I'm gonna run around. The city of St. Louis was sort of a character in the film, by the river, by the Mississippi River, and some of the parks and stuff. So I ran around recording what I thought was gonna be a bunch of great ambiances, but I had such bad like wind protection on my microphones that it was just all mic diaphragms buffeting against. And it was terrible. I spent like most of a day and had to scrap it and go back out with better stuff. I remember literally standing, like I had an XY pair, literally
Mhm.
standing in front of it to try and block the wind, which of course didn't sound very good.
Fair enough, fair
The-
enough.
yeah, the most interesting ones lately have been a variety of animals and getting animals not in an enclosed space. Because if an animal on screen is in an enclosed space, you can add reverb. But if you've got a reverby recording of an animal and they're not in an enclosed space, right? So I got some really good cows, but on a session, but then I got some goats that were all inside, and I've used them a little bit, but it's been really hard to use them because it sounds like they're in a barn, which they were. So there's definitely a challenge of getting those animals to perform and behave, but then do it in an environment that you can actually capture
Yeah,
successfully is
yeah.
tricky. Yeah.
No, and I feel like kind of the noise cancellation plugins that work to get rid of the verb are more tuned to hear specific sounds like our voice and stuff, not necessarily like a cow mooing, you know?
Right,
So I
right.
don't know. Yeah, like I can only imagine the hassle that could bring with it trying to get that to work properly for those sounds. Speaking of sounds and different soundscapes, do you have a different mindset when you go into, say, like a horror movie project or like a horror vibe, or like, you know, sometimes it'd be campy or all these different type of soundscapes and designs? What's your mindset when trying to go, all right, I need to get a library together to like get an idea of the sound that comes with this?
I mean, it's a lot of listening to other things. Like it's a lot of getting references from clients. So, I watch a lot of stuff, but I don't watch every genre and I'm not super familiar with every genre. So I did a series of horror shorts with a client for a while, and I'm trying to think of stuff that's been sort of less in my wheelhouse. I did a pilot for sort of an anime style series, which was interesting. And so I had them send me a bunch of references and did some digging and ended up buying one small library that had specific sort of sounds in that genre. So I think that's my main process, is sort of seeing what the conventions are, what a director will expect, what an audience would expect from whatever kind of genre. That being said, and maybe this is, I don't know, maybe this is not a good thing about me, but it's a bad thing about me. I tend to sort of like take everything on its own terms. So like I want to know what a typical anime project sounds like, what the whooshes should be, what the zips should be, what the transitions, whatever. But I like to just go by what this particular project seems to need, even if it doesn't fit the bill for what horror or whatever the thing would normally be. I want to do something that works, something that supports the film, supports the story, and makes it better, not just, oh yeah, this is what you do in a horror film. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah, of like, oh yeah, we just put strings in there and make it sound like they're dying as this.
Right, right. You just have to make a big reverse whoosh up to the thing. Well, no, you don't necessarily. There's a lot of different ways to get at the right emotion. I teach a history of film sound class, And it's always interesting watching things and learning over and over again, semester after semester. Oh yeah, that was a really interesting thing they did in this film, 50 years ago, 60 years ago, whatever, that I can apply to what I'm doing now.
So, one of my favorite things about sound design, everyone thinks about it's the sound that you need to grab to make it work. But what I found interesting is the concept of the opposite. Where do you make the silence to make the sound affect more? And that blew my mind because I was always trying to think of like how, I always got to do a background sound or I got to do, a stab of there and
Right,
whatnot.
right.
How do you use silence or lack of sound to help make those other sounds sound better?
Yeah, I mean, silence is so powerful, and that it's sort of, we're so used to, as audience members, as viewers, to stuff being there all the time. Like you said, background sounds and the proper practical sounds of everything happening, and dialogue, and of course we're used to music when we're watching films. So you take any of those elements away, and like, as an audience member, you stop, like you lean in a little bit if anything goes away. And of course it's used to great effect with like suspense and horror to deliberately do that to give you a jump scare. But any sort of genre, even the kid stuff that I've done, like, hey, if we thin this out, if we take stuff away, it's going to make it seem important. It's going to make it seem different. I'm always, any episode, any film, any whatever, I'm looking for opportunities, like you said, to do less. Hey, here's a moment where we can pull some things out. It's not about showing off how many sounds you can put it. It's about making the film more interesting, making the show more interesting. So here's a moment where if we pull things out, the audience is going to want to lean in. And now we've got an opportunity to, um, really grab their attention and surprise them, or give them something more meaningful, or scare them too if you want. But yeah.
Yeah, yeah. No, absolutely. Actually, in like animation in particular, I feel like there's way more control in a sense of what things sound like because there's no room mic or like spatial awareness with the mic on the lavalier of someone. Like you're always trying to isolate that voice in a live production so you don't get the rest of it. But the other, when you're in animation, it's all isolated. So you have to kind of almost be like, oh, I'm going to fill in what that's going to sound. I know you do that for live still, but like I feel like animation's even 10 more because live you see every detail. With animation, and it's not blades of grass with insects in it. It's just some green mush, like
Right.
that.
Right.
You kind of have to think of what people are gonna want to hear, right? It's
Yes.
kind of
Yeah.
setting up those expectations.
Exactly. That's what I was going to say. Yeah. People have an expectation, and you can meet that expectation, or you can subvert that expectation and do something interesting with it that way. Yeah. I mean, Ben Burt's great. The quote from some behind the scenes thing that I show in all my classes is, with animation, you get nothing for free. Like, there's nothing. There's, like you said, there's no room tone. There's no, I mean, the dialogue, obviously, but from the world of what you're seeing on screen, there's nothing. And so that can be challenging, but it's also an opportunity to do some really interesting, you can put your own spin on a location, on a space, on a person, on a whatever, with all the sound stuff for sure.
Yeah, and I didn't even get into the fact that I forget that when we get those projects in, it's not the final animation. It's never the final
Well,
picture
right.
you're
Yeah.
working with.
Right, right. I'm trying to think in Wing Feather. I mean, the funny thing, this is, characters in animation are always, sometimes, as you said, we get in this sort of blocky stage. So where they don't, you have to assume they're going to be doing something more natural. But yeah, it can be sort of off putting until you get used to it.
It's crazy thinking about how when we get the picture, it's not finished. It's
Right.
not. There's some details in there to be able to work with and get the idea of like, the hits and the timing of everything.
Sure,
But not
sure.
all the times. The animation might be stiff, and you are dealing with like Frankenstein robot just sliding across the screen, and you're like, they still want some sound design for this? Or are
Right.
you sure? Like,
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I know you worked on a project with me, and Sarah, who's been my editor for years, she works with the Cardinals. And so she'll bring her laptop, between when they have a doubleheader and she's got downtime between. I remember the project that you guys both worked on. Maybe there was like Bible stories, and sure enough, here's like naked Jesus walking around, and she's sitting at the Cardinals, control booth, and here's naked Jesus on her screen. I remember her telling me once that like her coworkers said, "What in the world are you?" Well, he's going to get some clothes on eventually, but yeah, it can be a little odd at times for sure.
yeah, yeah. I will admit, my partner walked by and was like, "What are you working on? Like right now? Like,
Yeah.
is this? Are you sure this is what they said it's supposed to be? Like, they're all naked right
Right.
now. Like,
Are you okay? Right.
Yeah. It's like, no, it's for work. I swear.
Yeah, exactly.
It is safe for work. It is the work.
Yes. Yeah. Eventually, it'll be safe for work.
Yeah. That's true. I guess it's not quite at the time safe for anyone's work.
On our next episode, Adam and I continue our conversation, talking about our experience working on VeggieTales, what important skills needed for working in post-production audio, the importance of knowing your reference, and more unique sounds that Adam has been able to make.
All right, so like and subscribe so you know when the next episode will come up. And until then, keep listening to the sounds around you.